In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. A neighbor's choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gornoski. So glad to be with you here again live today. It's Friday, which means we're going to have a great time, like we always do, looking at the week in review, looking at the news of today. Man, there's so many interesting stories that just illustrate where we need to go, how to get out of this mess. And I can't wait to get to them together with you today. And of course, you may be watching us on video stream. Make sure you subscribe to our video channel wherever you are watching us on, YouTube or Rumble or BitChute or those other platforms that you may enjoy. Let us know. Or you may be listening to us by podcast. And if so, make sure you subscribe and rate and review there. And if you want to go to the best site you can go to learn about the personhood revolution that we're a part of, then you can go to aneighborschoice.com, our headquarters for everything we do in our group as we build the best media platform available in the world. That's what our goal is, to build the best. Not just the best radio show, not just the best podcast, not just the best films, but everything together. Our articles, the editorials, we want to be the best, not just for the sake of being the best, but because our message is the message that our time needs to hear. Our culture needs to hear it. It's what's necessary. It's what moves things forward, is when we get this message and we get it right and we practice it and we live it out. And that is what we're here to do today, as always, when we come together on this program. So there's happy news. Super Nintendo World has opened in Japan. And the New York Times says, ride on Yoshi, race in a Mario Kart, try to forget the pandemic. Well, look, the only thing the New York Times doesn't want us to do is to really forget the pandemic. They want to use this to create that new normal where their view of religious worship, devotion of the state is fully entrenched into every aspect of our lives that they deem necessary. But, the market continues to persist and say, hey, you know what? Things have to move on. We don't have to just continue to live constantly in the fear of something, because fear is what separates us. Fear is what divides us and slows us down. It's not scientific. It's fear that governs so much of the reaction to this pandemic. And a person online, a social media person named @TweetTruthToMe, refers to an exchange that happened yesterday between Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, and Dr. Fauci. It says, people say Rand Paul is not an expert on viruses. He's only an ophthalmologist. The same people say we need to listen to Bill Gates when it comes to viruses, public health, agriculture, economics, and education. And so that's kind of the reality, is that we have this situation where people are not able to tell the truth about what's going on. You're not allowed to talk about it. You say Rand Paul, he is, he is not to be talked about. He can't be talking about anything to do with viruses. But Bill Gates, with no credentials in that category, he's supposed to be a huge world-controlling, world-shifting narrative voice for people to follow. Another story in the New York Times says Russia erupts in fury over Biden's calling Putin a killer. And the Twitter posted that, and there you see that Putin says it takes one to know one after Biden agrees with statement calling the Russian president a killer. And you think about it, and you say, that they're both true. Putin has overseen killing to maintain his situation in his country. And at the same time, Biden has spent 50 years instrumenting killing. Killing. Who killed more people? Who killed more civilians in aggressive wars? Joe Biden or Vladimir Putin? Oh, that's going to trigger some left-wing media outlets, isn't it? They love wars when it's countries that they don't want to have a voice. They don't want Libyans to have a voice. They don't want the Libyans who are put in the modern slave trade in Libya because of Joe Biden and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton's horrible insurrection chaos over there. No. The left-wing regime media does not want to give those Libyans a voice. They do not want to give the Yemeni a voice. They do not want to give the Afghanis a voice. They don't want to give the Syrians a voice because their voices don't matter to this war machine media. They don't matter. And that's why, it's true. Joe Biden has been making a killing, doing the bidding of killing for over a century, a half a century, I mean. That is the reality that the rest of the world sees about our decrepit, failing, old way of doing governance that's represented by people like the failing person, Joe Biden. They are mummies of an old, failed system of might makes right, of using politically correct speech to patronize populations as you pillage them with fake trade deals and pillage other countries with no reason wars with no real constitutional basis or defense need. The media is obsessed with covering up for the powerful, covering up for the rich. Remember, Jeffrey Epstein was considered a conspiracy theory until the media had to cover the circumstances of his death. And they were very excited about moving on from that story, weren't they? They don't want to cover the powerful. They want to do the bidding of the powerful. They turned that story as fast as they could, but they will attack Pepe Le Pew. But if you talk about Jeffrey Epstein, they tried to dismiss it as a conspiracy until they couldn't. They're embarrassing. And nobody takes them seriously anymore, increasingly so. There is a small, fervent fundamentalist group, just like you can go to certain fundamentalist sects of religions, right? And you can find a packed house in their small churches. And that's kind of what the New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, that's what that crowd will continue to pull, a smaller and smaller, fervent, diehard fundamentalist set of willing dupes who are willing to suspend their disbelief to buy the asinine mythologies of these failing media institutions with their failing groupthink ideology. And the whole world is looking at these so-called leaders that want to act so self-righteous and so high and mighty, and they're saying, no, we're not doing it anymore. We're tired of you guys. You have no credibility. And they wanted to make Trump, and I'm not saying Trump did what he should have done or whatever in foreign policy, but the media wanted to paint Trump as the big clown that the world didn't take seriously, but it's really Biden and Hillary Clinton with her red stupid reset button. It's Biden. Today he's on the plane and he's falling 3 times. just stumbling and stumbling and stumbling. And it's not about making fun of people stumbling. It's the fact that this is a man who should not be where he's at, except for a desperate media and government bureaucracy and everything, putting everything they could to try to drag him over the finish line. And they should leave the man alone. But right now, as a symbol of America, he does not symbolize the grandeur and greatness of the old failing globalist order. When that man takes a stumble 3 times to the point where it looks like he's about to fall off the entire staircase, that's a symbol of globalism. That's the symbol of globalism as this failed, pathetic ripoff of Christianity, just stumbling and falling and grasping. And for the whole world to look at that pathetic joke. These people want to tell the world how to live. They want to fund abortions overseas. They're stumbling in their pathetic, pitiful attempts to hold on to power. And the whole world's laughing at them. Go look at what the Chinese official was saying to the Secretary of State. Don't even know who this nameless bureaucrat is that, I mean, Biden doesn't even know his name or whatever, right? Secretary of Defense, but I guess his Secretary of State, he probably doesn't know his Secretary of State either. And this guy trying to act arrogant, doing the same little stupid, politically correct thing. Oh, we're just so concerned about your stuff. And then China says, basically, who are you to talk to us? You say you're for freedom, but you're not. And that is the truth of the globalist failed world order. It's a disgrace. It's a pathetic attack against America. And even the people who have authoritarian regimes around the world are sick and tired of these stupid globalist losers. They'd rather have the real America back. Even if that real America might kick their tail in terms of economic vitality, they'd rather have the real deal back than these fake losers that stumble and fall around and cackle like Kamala Harris at the thought of locking somebody up. They're hypocrites, and people don't respect phony, stupid hypocrites. I think that the world would rather have a Ron Paul as president who would unleash American innovation and competitiveness beyond, I'm saying, a person with that kind of philosophy. I'm not saying literally now him getting in the office. I'm saying that kind of a person, that the world would rather have someone like that who's principled and consistent about free speech and private property and respect for privacy and respect for liberty and respect for the rule of law. They would rather have that and get their tails kicked in competition with who's going to attract more business and wealth than have these stupid Mickey Mouse losers who've spent their entire life locking people up, who can't fight back, and then preening in front of the camera as if they care a darn about anybody who's oppressed, with their fake little McWoke organizations like BLM.com that says, we want to disrupt the Western nuclear family. Like, that's a good idea. What a stupid organization to say that stupid crap. And we're supposed to take that and say that's a serious organization? Of course not. Disrupt the Western nuclear family. That's why we have the poverty we have. That's why we have the generational poverty and generational issues oppressing communities all over this country, because they have been dismantling the nuclear family this entire time. And the whole world sees these hypocrites and they say these guys are pathetic because they'll sell out their own people. At least Russia and China, they oppress their people, but at the end of the day, they care about the general condition of the nation. These renters of power like Biden, they don't know where they are, and all they do is just sell out for $1. Joe Biden's been selling you and your family out for an Egg McMuffin and a senior Diet Coke at McDonald's his entire life. This is how cheap these people are. They're pathetic, and the whole world laughs at these people. And these stupid, idiotic media outlets that prop up this weekend at Bernie's regime, but as a disgrace to what makes America beautiful. It's a disgrace to what makes America what the whole world wants us to still be. But these losers who have this freaking creepy Orwellian control of media narratives For whatever reason, it's probably just groupthink and stupidity. They're tired of these fake losers lecturing the whole world and bombing every country and then acting like they have to say anything about Dr. Frickin' Seuss. Pathetic, contemptuous losers that the media props up. These Joe Scarborough losers. Nobody cares about these people. They just have power because their corporations like MSNBC have been owned by General Electric and companies like that for some time who've made a killing off of war. They're disgraceful. They have no moral authority to speak assert anything about our society. They're just failed losers of outdated information and bad, brutish policy. We'll take a break and return live on A Neighbor's Choice. Email me hello@aneighborschoice.com or call in at 727-587-1040. That's 727-587-1040. Back in a second. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com. Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit that's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLSID 1492187, Equal Housing Lender.
Feeling lonely? You don't need to. There are friends in your community looking to be part of your life. Where are they? At your local church, of course. It's time to start getting back together for support, love, and friendship. There's no better place to do that than at your church. Make a plan this Sunday to be at one of the area's welcoming churches. You'll not regret it. The welcoming committee is there every Sunday. See you soon.
A YouTuber online asks us, does anyone know where I can get a copy of the Jefferson Bible in English and Latin side by side? Maybe you need to go to the Antique Roadshow. Another one says, Putin's not wrong. Another listener says, Biden's lack of physical coordination and mental acuity is frightening. The optics are horrific. And the rest of the world sees it, and the Dems will keep making excuses for him. Another listener, Scott, says, the nation turns to Florida man for guidance. It's so true. Florida man was always ahead of the curve, and all these big city places that are just desperate to try to catch up. This is the home of the media revolution, the sunshine apocalypse, the unveiling of things hidden since the foundation of the world. That's what we're going to do here on this media platform, on the things that we are a part of. It's not about us. It's about the bigger picture that we happen to be a part of, pushing people towards. So yes, we are all Florida man now. That's why you're here on A Neighbor's Choice. You look at these stories here, I mean, it's just nonsense after nonsense, and we're tired of these people. We're tired of being polite, and we're going to continue to do our best to be polite because we're classy. Because unlike these politicians, we were raised and we continue to act the way we were taught to treat people, right? Even when they are hateful, you don't respond to the same gutter level that they do. And of course, the establishment tries to co-opt that language as if that's what they do. Of course, Michelle Obama's famous thing, when they go low, we go high. But what was it, high to kill a 16-year-old kid, Michelle Obama, like your husband did? I mean, do you have a conscience, or was that just, don't talk about it, you're not going to talk about that in your next Netflix special. What if you made a movie, Michelle Obama, with your little Netflix Hollywood friends, about the life of that 16-year-old kid that your husband ordered the execution of around a campfire with his friends? We'd like to see his story. You fake Hollywood corporatists. These people are just so transparently hypocritical, nobody buys it. But they have a fundamentalist, shrinking little group of people that are so it's like a cult. They believe what their cult leaders tell them to believe. They believe that they are righteous to attack Dr. Seuss and Curious George while electing a man like Joe Biden to pillage your family, to keep people incarcerated. Has he done any clemencies, by the way? No, of course not. That's why it would have been better to have President Trump in here on that level alone, because President Trump would still be issuing clemencies. He didn't issue the clemencies that I wanted, or the people he did for some of the people. Many of the people that were on my show, I was the only program talking about the people who are now out because of President Trump, and have been on my program while they were in prison asking for clemency, and have come on the program since receiving clemency and coming back home to their families. But Biden is just like Obama. He's a generic, cowardly politician that won't issue clemencies until he's at the end of his term, and only when the DOJ clears them. That's why he didn't do anything. Obama didn't do anything for people like Alice Marie Johnson, who languished in prison for 8 years as a grandmother who did less than what he admits to doing in his own biography. They're hypocrites. They get their Netflix specials and then they lie, and cage, and bomb. That's all they do. And we're tired of these people lecturing us. They have no moral authority. They have no moral credibility to say anything about anybody. They are sorry losers. And it's unfortunate that we have to use the direct language, but that's what's needed to just clear the air and tell the truth so that you don't have to feel bullied and victimized and pushed around by moral frauds who've done more to hurt the world with unnecessary killings and drone strikes and sanctions than any other group of politicians in a long, long time. So sad. But we must persist with joy and conviction and face the news with confidence that we're going to win the big picture for liberty, love, and nonviolence. Back in a moment.
Politics these days are just that. Politics. Pathetic discussions about things that don't matter while the pandemic, crime, and economic disparity march on. That's why you need a balanced approach to news, business, and entertainment in the state of Florida. That publication is newstalkflorida.com. Whether it's the White House, the courthouse, or your neighbor's house, News Talk Florida has the sources, articles, video, and audio that will be a must daily check-in from your laptop or mobile device. Take a look at newstalkflorida.com. Today's news and entertainment with a Florida slant.
The president and vice president in Georgia this hour, meeting privately with leaders of the Asian community following the Atlanta shooting spree that killed 8 people, 6 of them women of Asian descent. Earlier in Atlanta, a stop at CDC headquarters.
We owe you a gigantic debt of gratitude.
The president giving CDC researchers and scientists the credit for managing the vaccine rollout, saying he counts on their guidance.
Science is back.
Mr. Biden promising that unlike the previous administration, he will defer to the medical experts. Andy Field, ABC News, Washington.
In Minneapolis, a 13th juror seated today in the trial of Derek Chauvin, the former police officer is charged with George Floyd's murder. Judge Peter Cahill denied a defense motion for a change of venue or delay due to the city's settlement with the Floyd family.
I do not think that that would give the defendant any kind of a fair trial beyond what we are doing here today.
Jury selection continues with one more juror needed. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
So if you were listening on radio, you heard the state-submitted media outlet ABC report gleefully Biden's little canned statement that science is back. No, he doesn't know anything about science. He doesn't understand what green energy is. He couldn't spell green energy. He doesn't know a thing about how to help poverty get alleviated. He doesn't understand the first thing about seed oils and what they're doing to people's health, what they're doing. He doesn't know anything about science. This guy's a clueless person. This is not a respectable person. This is a person who's made his money off of hurting poor people with his family. This is not an honorable person. This guy doesn't know anything about science. This is an ignorant person that the media is trying to manufacture into something that we should listen to. This is their religion. You prop up these little sacred avatars for the state, and they're like a high priest that we're all supposed to, oh, wow, what are you saying? Science is back? You don't know anything about science. They don't know anything about vegetable oils and what they're doing to our bodies and decades of accumulation of these things. They don't understand any of this stuff. And I'm not saying that I know it all either, but you know what I do? I find the people who actually know the science in relation to the areas that affect our life, and I put them on this program. We will have another interview with Tucker Goodrich, who is a world-class nutritional researcher, noted for his meticulous analysis of the data and presenting it in a way that we can all understand. We'll have a new interview with him this weekend. Joe Biden won't talk about that stuff because he doesn't know anything about science. He's a paid hack for big pharma, big military, big banks, big bureaucracy, like he's always been. And the media likes those kind of people. And they really, really, really want you to like them too. And they want you to just sit down and be told when you're allowed to hug your grandparents, when you're allowed to see anybody, when you're allowed to have a cookout. They are such little busybody fascists. And they are fascists. Fascism means the merger of big government and big business, and that's exactly what they want. You think the media wants everything completely turned into government? No, they make money. They want to keep their profits. And they want to socialize the losses onto you. That's corporatism or fascism. The problem with the word fascism is that it's so tied to the Nazi regime that when you say it, people think, oh my goodness, you're trying to say that they're that. No, the technical understanding of fascism is corporatism. It's corporatism. And that's exactly what the media loves. It's a mixture of socialist scraps for you and I and corporate profits, obscene profits for their friends who benefit from the state rigging our economy. That's the reality. that we're in. These people lecture us day in and day out about which cartoons we're allowed to watch. Can't watch Disney, but you can sure watch the disgusting stuff that they present as revelatory from Cardi B or whatever, right? That's revelatory. Obama striking a 16-year-old Muslim boy with a drone strike in cold blood. He was just a kid, didn't do nothing just because his dad. That's, I guess, a sacred act of sacrificial violence for the state and for the media, because it's one of their designated heroes doing it. So that's okay. No, it's not okay. They're not God. They don't make the rules of reality, and they can't suspend the rules of what's right and wrong. National Review reports that Biden, this is, I guess, a couple months ago, but I just saw it. Biden signs executive order allowing the U.S. to fund global abortions. So, according to public opinion polls, the article says most Americans don't want the U.S. to fund abortions in other countries. A new poll out yesterday from Marist and the Knights of Columbus found that more than 3/4 of Americans oppose using U.S. aid money to fund abortion overseas. The same survey shows that voters in Biden's own party disagree with him on this issue. A slight majority of Democrats say they do not want the U.S. funding global abortions. At least that's something they understand. That's the first time I've ever seen Democrats say they don't want to fund abortions. At least they have a conscience on this issue at some point here. And nearly 2/3 of self-described pro-choice Americans agreed. 85% of independent voters, meanwhile, said they oppose U.S. funding of overseas abortions. Why are we funding overseas abortions? Is it any wonder that all these countries like China and Russia are sick and tired of our country lecturing them about what's right and wrong? What kind of a country is known for exporting decadent culture like Cardi B songs that are lauded as transcendent in their celebration of woman? You know, by the way, that's a culturally chauvinistic thing to say, because you are taking a Western unique frame of what should be exalted, and you're imposing that onto all the other billions of people around the globe who don't share the decadent cultural nihilism of Hollywood. So we export Hollywood, we export military occupation, we export debt, and we, of course, export abortion. That's what the founders intended. That's the project of the Declaration of Independence and the constitutional concepts and so forth. That's what they were hoping to achieve here. Bombs, debt, rigged trade deals that benefit a few corporations and a few banks and hurt everybody else, and abortions paid for by you and I. And you wonder why the world doesn't want to look to America anymore. And you wonder why countries like China are saying, take a hike. Tony Blinken, he blanked out. Scott Adams on Twitter said, if you search for Chinese food on the DoorDash app, it now has a picture of Tony Blinken. Chen Weihua, I hope I'm saying, he's a China state-affiliated media, replied, it must be like General Tso chicken or fortune cookie. You don't find them in China. People are tired of these hypocrites. We're ready to move forward. We want to take care of our families. We want to have good education. We want to have safe neighborhoods. We want to have dignity. We want to have strong families. We want to have good job opportunities. We want to have the opportunity to start a business. We want to get along with our neighbors. We don't want to have every time there's any kind of a tragedy to be using it as an attack against this race versus that race. And this is the stupid, failed ideology. It is a religion, and it's dying right in front of our eyes. And we have to deal with the mess as this stinky, bloated corpse of globalism is rotting in front of us, and we have to try to navigate out of it. This failed ideology that is hurting people, dividing people rather than uniting people to protect human life. Nobody should be hurt. Nobody should be caged for nonviolent, victimless choices. Nobody should be bombed for preemptive war. Nobody should be shot in a school or shot in a place of work because of the nihilism and the meaninglessness that our culture keeps stewing into people's hearts. We can't dream anymore without these jerks trying to divide us. You can't have any kind of dreamers. You can't have anybody that thinks differently. These people want a monolithic undifferentiation. A blob of humanity with no gender, no nothing, just everybody looks the same blob. That's what they want. No pronoun, nothing. You know, everything is supposed to be totally undistinguishable. No diversity. Constant guilt. Shame. This is diabolical. You're not supposed to live in a place of shame constantly. How can you get on with life? How can you deal with the things you've already got? It's already hard enough to let people keep you in a place of shame and guilt all the time. And self-righteousness to mask it over. That's what the failed, stinky, bloated, brutish religion of political correctness or McWokeism is all about. It's a reactionary, failed religious paradigm, and it depends on sacrifice. It depends on sacrificing some for the greater good. Because that religion is trying to imitate the aesthetic and the ethic of Christianity and its concern for the victims, but it doesn't want to do it the way Jesus does, which is nonviolently. It wants to do it the coercive, vicious, aggressive way that continues to fall apart the more it's tried. So we're in an interesting time. This is a wild transitionary moment in history. And where we go is up to us and what we decide to model in our life. Speaker Pelosi, meanwhile, is saying it's really important to lower the voting age to 16. That's from Tom Elliott, said that. So she wants to lower the voting age. And I said this years ago before they even were talking about this. I said the next place they're going to go is the left is going to try to make a big deal about emancipating children from their adults. That's all they do. They try to divide everybody into a collectivist identity. And they cut and they find. It's like intersectionality. They're always cutting and finding and trying to create new camps of where they can create grievance and vengeance and resentment. And the next one, I've said this for years, you can go, check the receipts. That for years I've been saying the next frontiers will be the total attempts to totally emancipate children, and saying they're going to say it's oppressive to be a child. That it's not going to be 16, it's going to be 10. They're going to try to get you to vote at 10 because they promise perpetual infantilization. So why not move it to 10? Why not move it closer to an infant as close as they can get it? Their whole worldview is a total infantilization of sovereign adults. That you can get health care for free, that you can get college for free. Everybody can have free college and it will be totally just as valuable as it was when people had to pay for it. It's so dumb. This is stupid, childish inanity. But that's their prescription for everything. We can be like little kids and have a temper tantrum and destroy entire countries if they don't have the right leadership. But that's okay. Hollywood will tell you that you're cool and you'll get a Netflix movie and all this stuff like the Obamas. That's an infantilization. Massage reality. And that's why they want to move their next political focus on to kids. and stir up grievances between parents and kids. They already do this, but they're going to double down on make that the next big thing. After the you saw that they were they were kind of testing that model out during the aftermath of the shooting in Florida, where the kids were the front and center of the campaign. And they were testing that out as like a trial balloon, but they're going to keep trying that to put kids and try to make it a big deal to get the voting age down to 16, and then they'll go to 10. Because think about it, when your whole philosophy is the consecration of undifferentiation, it's oppressive to stop it at 16. Once they get to 16, they're going to say, well, what about a 15-year-old? What about a 10-year-old? What about a 12-year-old? It's not fair. They're going to keep going and going and going because they want your whole total life to be devoted to the state. That's why they want eventually 3-year-olds to be voting on what the state looks like, because that is their God. It consumes everything about them. That's what it's all about. Spreading that old-time religion of ritual sacrifice that the state represents. And it must be pushed further and further to kids, which is not going to be a good thing for kids. It's going to be a terrible thing for kids. It's going to, in reality, be a war on innocence, a war on childhood that will be masquerading as the liberation of children from the oppression of adults. But that's the future. Think about it. Can you imagine? Whew, this is a tough one. You know, imagine like the kids today when they're the age of Nancy Pelosi. What will they be advancing if this leftist culture project revolution is still pushing? What will it be by then? Do you see what I mean? Nancy Pelosi has been at it for a long time, undermining freedom, undermining liberty, undermining the concept of the human fall, that all of us are fallen, undermining empathy, undermining nonviolence, undermining solidarity with the human being, no matter who they are. She's been spending a whole life in a resentful attack against the foundations of love and creativity and beauty and togetherness. What will the Nancy Pelosi, when the kids today, by the time they're Nancy Pelosi's age, if this decadent McWoke culture is still going on its revolution tirade, what will it be then? What will be the frontier collectivist groups to find at that point? It's a terrible thing to consider, right? Goodness, could this thing keep going that bad? I mean, who knows? Depends on what we do. If we're going to keep being obsessed with these failed politicians, Mitch McConnell's and the Paul Ryans and the Ben Sass, all these people who just promise us war and platitudes and nothing. Yeah, I mean, I could see this thing dragging out for a long, long, miserable time to be in America. But on the other hand, if we understand what American innovation is all about, if we understand what skin in the game is all about, if we understand what morality is all about and family, we can get rid of this disgusting ideology by just out-competing it with love and market creativity and solidarity with each other. I'm David Gornosky. We'll take a break and return in just a moment. David Gornosky here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals, join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender. Logan Hall online responds to Speaker Pelosi's challenge to lower the voting age to 16, saying, "When I was 16, my friends and I bought a live lobster, put it on a leash, and walked it around the neighborhood at 2 a.m. That's why she wants 16-year-olds to vote. That's her base. That mindset. That's what she's looking to build. A permanent, glorious, permanent power base. For these folks, they never feel like the power they have is enough. It always feels like it's crumbling in front of their face, which it is, because the sands of time catch up and they realize that everything they've done has been totally, superfluous and meaningless, and trying to strive after, more and more and more. It's embarrassing. But there's a lot of people that buy into that stuff. As I said, there's a shrinking but very fervent fundamentalist group of folks that believe in the perpetual state controlling everything in their life. And that will be a difficult thing for folks to shake, that faith. I want to leave you with this comment this article from James Bovard. I have him on. He's a journalist and columnist, and I have him on frequently, but he has a story at Mises.org that says the never-ending battle between Leviathan and liberty. The notion that Americans, he says, will always be free is part of the catechism that is force-fed to public school students. For hundreds of years, philosophers, politicians, and reformers have touted a law of history that assures the ultimate triumph of freedom. Oppressed people cannot remain oppressed forever. The urge for freedom will eventually come, Martin Luther King Jr. wrote in his famous letter from Birmingham jail. But few political follies are more hazardous than presuming that one's liberties are forever safe. None of the arguments on why liberty is inevitable can explain why it has not yet arrived. Most of the human race existed with little or no freedom for 95% of recorded history. If liberty is God's gift to humanity, then why were most people who ever lived on earth denied this divine bequest? Many efforts at limiting state power have failed almost immediately. In the 13th century, oppressed English nobles revolted and sought to bind their kings in perpetuity. King John signed the Magna Carta in 1215, petulantly accepting a limit to his prerogative to pillage everything in his domain. While the Magna Carta is celebrated nowadays as the dawn of a new age, it failed to even bind the king who signed the document. The ink on his signature was barely dry before King John brought in foreign forces and proceeded to slaughter the barons who forced his signature. King John died just after his vengeance commenced, providing a respite for Englishmen. In the final realm, the Magna Carta was simply a political pledge that was honored only insofar as private courage and weaponry compelled sovereigns to limit their abuses. History is a chronology of nations pillaged by reckless regimes. English kings recited coronation oaths that limited their power. Such oaths were as binding as a congressional candidate's campaign promises. Rampaging kings sometimes converted smoldering discontent into a raging fire of resistance. Historian Thomas Macaulay summarized England's path to its glorious revolution of 1688. Oppression speedily did what philosophy and eloquence failed to do. King James II was ousted in 1688, and Parliament speedily enacted laws to curb all subsequent monarchs. The United States was the first government to be created with strict limitations on its power, enshrined in the Constitution. As James Madison wrote, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. The founders included numerous checks and balances in the Constitution to restrain political ambition, but they were never so naive as to presume that a parchment barrier would keep American liberty safe in perpetuity. So he just goes on to look at different things, but it's just very eloquent, this piece. You should check it out. But near the end, he says, most contemporary governments have more popular support than Soviet bloc regimes received in the 80s. But sustained abuses can be an acid drip that eventually topples any government regardless of its purported mandate. More Americans believe in witches, ghosts, and astrology nowadays than trust the federal government. In the COVID-19 era, America is degenerating into a cage-keeper democracy where voters merely select the politicians who place them under house arrest. Expecting liberty to permanently triumph would require rulers to miraculously become selfless, if not self-sacrificing. But as Hayek warned in his essay, Why the Worst Get on Top, power is a magnet for the dregs of humanity. Faith in the state will continue reviving as long as some people feel entitled to domineer other people. Political action pays a higher premium on deceit than almost any other human activity, and thus will remain perilous to everything decent. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, as our forefathers recognized in the 19th century. To presume that liberty is inevitable is to absolve oneself from fighting oppression. As soon as people drop the reins on government, politicians will leash the people. Rather than hoping for an end of history triumph, people must battle forever to defend their rights. As long as individuals continue to defy oppressors, the seeds of resistance will produce bountiful harvests of freedom in better times. So very good words to think about from Mr. Beaufort. So we had to think about this. Are we going to provide the seeds to liberty for our kids and grandkids? Or are we going to scorch the earth of our liberty? I think we have the choice in front of us right now, and it's not bleak. We can do it. We can do what's necessary to preserve and to expand liberty for many, many others to come. And it just takes persistence. It takes confidence. It takes love for our neighbor, and it takes the ability to see through the lies with courage and determination to make it through, even when it feels like you're all alone. You just keep going. I'm David Gornowski. I appreciate you. We'll be back in just a moment for hour 2, but for now, Godspeed.
Your home for news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park. Tampa Bay's all new News Talk 1040.
It's the only way I get news.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris in Georgia meeting this afternoon with Asian leaders, just days after the Atlanta area shooting spree that killed 8 people, 6 of them women of Asian descent. Their visit, planned before to tout their COVID rescue package, now a listening session on the rise in violence against Asian Americans nationwide. Earlier, they thanked researchers at CDC headquarters in Atlanta. The president sharing a victory lap, he says, on 100 million shots in his first 58 days in office, ahead of schedule.
The point is, the public is thankful to you because it's about science.
The CDC also changing the school rules when it comes to distancing for students, allowing a distance of 3 feet instead of 6 feet. It could help schools reopen fully sooner, including the nation's largest school district, New York City.
Hours after the CDC issued new guidance that allows school desks to be pushed closer together, 3 feet instead of 6 feet, Mayor Bill de Blasio said it's a chance to get more students back into classrooms.
For parents of kids in the younger grades, we are confident that we'll be able to bring back a substantial number of students by the end of April.
The mayor said the city would open a new window of opportunity next week for parents to opt in to in-person learning. This is for elementary school students first. Middle and high school students, the mayor said there are still a lot of questions. Aaron Katursky, ABC News, New York.
A dozen lawsuits that have been filed against Houston Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson alleging sexual misconduct during sessions with licensed massage therapists. Attorney Tony Busby represents the women.
Even after we had correspondence and after we had talked to Mr. Watson's lawyer, he did it again. I mean, this conduct happened as recently as this month.
Busby says he's been contacted by more than 22 women alleging similar misconduct. Watson has denied any wrongdoing. You're listening to ABC News.
The IRS doesn't mess around. If they want your money, they'll take it. They can take your paycheck and bank accounts too, even threaten your home or business. Don't take on the IRS alone. If you owe back taxes, the smartest thing you can do is call Optima Tax Relief. The experts at Optima specialize in a powerful IRS tax assistance program called the Fresh Start Initiative. And their clients that qualify are saving thousands, even tens of thousands. One call starts the process to stop the demand letters, stop aggressive collection actions, and stop the IRS from targeting you. But don't delay. It's important to act now while you still have options. Optima is A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. Optima has already resolved over $1 billion of tax debt for their clients. Get your life back. For tax help you need, for tax help you can trust, call Optima now for your free consultation.
Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
U.S. and China walking away from a 2-day meeting and airing of grievances in Alaska today. After the rough start to talks, the Secretary of State will make his first visit to Europe, meeting America's NATO allies in Brussels.
Tony Blinken will make his second overseas trip on Monday, focused again on, quote, repairing alliances, according to a senior U.S. diplomat. Former President Trump got NATO allies to boost defense spending, but often undermined the alliance's unity. Blinken's officials say their meetings next week will focus on threats from China and Russia, climate change, and the pandemic. Connor Finnegan, ABC News, Washington.
2 cruise lines announcing plans to relaunch in North America, setting sail in June.
To board the Royal Caribbean and Celebrity Cruise Line voyages, adults will have to show proof that they've been vaccinated. Children will have to show a negative COVID test result. The cruise lines will get around CDC approval by departing on 7-day cruises out of the Bahamas and St. Martin, never docking in a U.S. port. The CDC has banned large cruise ships from sailing since last March. The ships will go to Mexico and Aruba. Bookings open next week. Alex Stone, ABC News.
A federal judge in Boston today sentencing a former men's soccer coach to 8 months in prison for his role in the college admissions cheating scandal. Jorge Saldeo pleaded guilty to taking $200,000 in bribes to help get 2 students into UCLA. This is ABC News.
It's all about the nose. It's your air filter, the first line of defense against bacteria and viruses. If too many germs get stuck in your nose, guess what? You get sick. That's why it's so important to keep your nose clean, just like washing your hands. Now there's a better way to keep your nose clean and help your body protect itself. It's called Navage Nasal Care. Navage uses powered suction to flush out allergens, mucus, bacteria, and viruses. At Navage.com, CVS, Walgreens, Bed Bath, Target, and Rite Aid. Navage, Navage.
I'm Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport.
One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com.
From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media. A Neighbor's Choice. And I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gornosky. So glad to be with you live again for our second hour together as we're going to learn like neighbors together about the world and how it works as best as we can ascertain it, right? That's what we're trying to do together. We're not going to get into tribalism and groupthink. We're going to try to do the best we can to unpack the news, get past the fake news, and move towards a brighter future. One in which we have skin in the game and liberty back in the driver's seat. Gokata Online says, the news is always a hoot. Imagine Biden in the same sentence as a victory lap. They changed the criteria from 6 feet to 3 feet. They're just pulling things out of their tails now. I can't wait to hear the science that backs that decision. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. These people, they love the control. This is what the new normal is all about. It's all about a giant science experiment for how much gullibility and suggestibility and control that they can produce out of gullible, fundamentalist, fervent, low information believers in their faith, you see? You have to understand this as a religion. People have been so indoctrinated to believe that religion means a belief in a deity and all this stuff. No, it's not just that. It's the structure of how people organize. That they have a shared sacred, and that shared sacred is this shared sense of transcendence, that together we can do it. With the Great Reset, we can do whatever we want. With our faith in science, we can do whatever we want. 6 feet away, now 3 feet apparently. And Biden's taking a victory lap, right? I mean, these are languages that are just, religious insanity. Blind faith in the state. And it's just, people have so much going on in their life, they don't have time for this stuff. They're ready to move past it. Let's try to listen into this exchange between Senator Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci from yesterday. It got a lot of attention in the news, but we can play some of it here if you haven't heard of it, and we'll try to get to some comments and comment on it as we go.
In a recent British study, David Wiley and others found that no symptomatic reinfections from COVID-19 after following 2,800 patients for several months. In fact, there have been no reports of significant numbers of reinfections after acquiring COVID-19 naturally. Shane Crotty, a virologist at La Jolla Institute for Immunology, concludes from his experiments that the amount of immune memory gained from natural infection would likely prevent the vast majority of people from getting hospitalized disease, severe disease for many years. In this study, which was published in Science, Dr. Crotty showed that antibody levels stayed relatively constant with only modest declines over 6 to 8 months. Dr. Crotty reported that notably memory B cells specific for the spike protein or RBD were detected in almost all COVID-19 cases with no apparent half-life at 5 to 8 months after infection. In other words, Dr. Crotty found significant evidence of long-term immunity after COVID infection. Furthermore, Dr. Cruddy noted B-cell memory to some other infections has been observed for as long as 60 plus years after smallpox vaccination, or even 90 years after a natural infection with influenza. That was a woman who got the Spanish flu, still showed immunity 90 years later. So rather than being pessimistic towards people gaining immunity after they've had COVID or had a vaccine, studies argue for significant optimism. In fact, there have been no scientific studies arguing or proving that infection with COVID does not create immunity. There have been no studies showing significant numbers of reinfections. Of the 30 million Americans who have had COVID, only a handful of reinfections have been discovered. In fact, the New York Times reported last fall more than 38 million people at the time worldwide had been infected with the coronavirus, and as of that date, fewer than 5 of these cases had been confirmed by scientists to be reinfections. Scientists interviewed for the article concluded, in most cases, a second bout with the virus produced milder symptoms or none at all. Given that no scientific studies have shown significant numbers of reinfections of patients previously infected or previously vaccinated, what specific studies do you cite to argue that the public should be wearing masks well into 2022?
I'm not sure I understand the connection of what you're saying about masks and reinfection. We're talking about people who have never been infected before.
You're telling everybody to wear a mask, whether they've had an infection or a vaccine. What I'm saying is they have immunity, and everybody agrees they have immunity. What studies do you have that people that have had the vaccine or have had the infection are spreading the infection? If we're not spreading the infection, isn't it just theater?
No, it's not.
You had the vaccine and you're wearing 2 masks. Isn't that theater?
No, that's not. Here we go again with the theater. Let's get down to the facts. Okay, the studies that you quote from Crotty and Sete look at in vitro examination of memory immunity, which in their paper, they specifically say this does not necessarily pertain to the actual protection. It's in vitro.
And what study can you point to that shows significant reinfection? There are no studies that show
let me finish the response to your question, if you please. The other thing is that when you talk about reinfection and you don't keep in the concept of variants, that's an entirely different ballgame. That's a good reason for a mask. In the South African study conducted by J&J, they found that people who were infected with wild type and were exposed to the variant in South Africa, the 351, it was as if they had never been infected before. They had no protection. So when you talk about reinfection, you've got to make sure you're talking about wild type. I agree with you that you very likely would have protection from wild type for at least 6 months if you're infected. But we in our country now have variants that are circulating.
Significant reinfection. What study shows significant reinfection, hospitalization, and death after either natural infection or the vaccine? It doesn't exist. There is no evidence that there are significant reinfections after vaccine. In fact, I don't think we have a hospitalization in the United States after the 2-week period after the second vaccination. We don't have a death in the United States.
You're not hearing what I'm saying about variants. We're talking about wild type versus variants.
And what proof is there that there are significant reinfections with hospitalizations and death from the variants? None in our country. Zero.
Well, because we don't have a prevalent of a variant yet. We're having one. Can I finish? We're having 117 that's becoming more dominant.
Policy based on conjecture.
No, it isn't based on conjecture.
Variants. So you want people to wear a mask for another couple years.
No.
You've been vaccinated and you parade around in 2 masks for show.
No.
You can't get it again. There's virtually 0% chance you're going to get it, and yet you're with them that have had the vaccine, who have immunity. You're defying everything we know about immunity by telling people to wear a mask who've been vaccinated. No. Instead, you should be saying there is no science to say we're going to have a problem from the large number of people being vaccinated. You want to get rid of vaccine hesitancy? Tell them they can quit wearing their mask after they get the vaccine. You want people to get the vaccine? Give them a reward instead of telling them that the nanny state's going to be there for 3 more years and you got to wear a mask forever. People don't want to hear it. There's no science behind it.
Well, let me just state for the record that masks are not theater. Masks are protective. And we
have immunity there, theater. If you already have immunity, you're wearing a mask to give comfort to others. You're not wearing a mask because of any science.
I totally disagree with you.
So that's the exchange there. And of course, the ignorant anti-science crew on social media, they want to always attack Senator Rand Paul, but Senator Rand Paul's correct. Their little sacred idol, their little sacred God is exposed as just a politician, not a credible scientist on this stuff. Because wearing a cloth mask has not been demonstrated to be effective. And especially for those who have had the virus, that why should they have to wear the mask? There's no evidence that these other variants are coming back into people who've had the vaccine or who have developed herd immunity through the exposure to the disease. And so he's wrong on so many levels, but it is theater. And that's why he gets angry whenever someone with the guts like Senator Rand Paul tells him what it is to his face. This is theater for conditioning people to continually accept this as the new normal for the rest of their life. Because even if they stop their little mask thing at some point, they will know enough that they will try again and again and again to do way more intrusive nanny state incursions into people's life. Like we talked about yesterday with Mayor de Blasio of New York City saying he's going to use the police to get at citizens for things that aren't even crime. And they will use that to go after you for reading Dr. Seuss eventually or anything else they want. I don't care about Dr. Seuss. The point is they will go whatever they can to keep trying to maximize their new normal, to abuse people's liberties for their own selfish gain. Don't ever think that government is the non-profit sector. It is all about profit. It is all about self-centeredness in their policies. Even when you have great people in there, the system is systemically bent towards selfishness at your expense. And thankfully, Senator Rand Paul continues to be one of the very, very few in the American government who says anything of significance to Dr. Fauci and exposes how empty his ideas are. One of the YouTube viewers online says Fauci is not used to dealing with a real doctor. It's a good point. And so is the rest of America. The rest of America is still stuck on that old, well, I don't know how much of America is, but a large portion of the TV party's constituents is stuck on the cut, stab, mass symptoms of big pharma medicine for their primary health, and which is totally not the way to go. We'll take a break and return with more news in just a moment. For now, you can email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. That's hello@aneighborschoice.com. Or call in at 727-587-1040. That's 727-587-1040. Or, as many of you have done, drop us a comment on our YouTube stream, and we will get to it as we can in the course of this broadcast. Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida. Or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa.
Not attorney spokeswoman.
You can't have a fresh outlook on the new year if you're staring through a chipped or cracked windshield. Autoglass America will fix it and give you up to $150 cash back to help pay holiday bills. With qualifying insurance, we'll come to you with mobile service and install a premium quality replacement with a lifetime warranty at no cost to you. Get a great outlook on the new year with a new windshield and New Year's cash from Autoglass America. 813-96-GLASS. 813-96-GLASS.
Mr. Westford online, our YouTube comment section says, a neighbor that lives by me has a yard sign that says in bold, trust Dr. Fauci. And Tina says St. Anthony is not used to being challenged. And Mr. Westford said it's really interesting to identify the religious symbolism behind even political signs like that. It's like seeing a sign in a supposed Christian yard that would say, trust God. And that's the same thing I thought. It's in God we trust, right? And these folks, see, we have been ill-equipped by our educational system and academic circles to understand religion. And we don't understand how thoroughly religious all humans are, even the most self-described atheists. At the same time, I call myself a political atheist, which is what I believe is what it means when you imitate the role model of Jesus and what he did in history dealing with social conflicts in the state and religion in his time. But we are thoroughly baked into religion. That's baked into our DNA. René Girard calls it the placenta of humanity, religion. Without it, we wouldn't have maintained our existence because it ordered us and it differentiated us, right? And you had to have differentiation because we are so hyper imitation driven. We're so mimetic, right? I use this term, but I try to, not make it technical. We're dealing with a broadcast media where people are driving to and from work and so forth, and people are catching these conversations, and I try not to use too many technical language when I'm doing the radio show. For a deeper dive, you can go to our website at neighborschoice.com and search for Things Hidden and see our podcast series there to catch more of a deeper, more extended discussion about some of these things. But That's where we're at. We're in this moment where the old religious structures, which were all about preserving differences and differentiation, and that doesn't make there was obviously bad with that and good, but that's all been destroyed. And now we're in this era of undifferentiation. I call it consecrated chaos, consecrated undifferentiation. If you ever want to see what undifferentiation looks like, look to the great text, the profound text Looney Tunes. And you see when Bugs Bunny gets into a conflict with, say, Elmer Fudd or whoever, and they get into a dust cloud. And you see a hand go there and a foot go there and a tail bursting out of the dust cloud, but it just spins around like a entity in and of itself, right? And then at some point, Bugs Bunny will come out of the dust cloud and look at the camera as the dust cloud continues, as if he's breaking the fourth wall and saying, look at how ridiculous conflict is. Who is he fighting with anyways in there? And that's what undifferentiation is. It's when we get so lost and so consumed in competition and imitation that we become so identical with one another we can't tell each other apart. And this decaying McWoke religion that is dying in front of us, the final stage of its death and decay is this consecrated, constant, undifferentiated chaos. And that's not a good place to be. For all the faults of the old order of religion, they understood that envy and jealousy were the worst things to allow to be unleashed in a society. And that in order to stave off envy and jealousy, you should have differentiation. You should have containers of taboos so that you can say, this is good, this is not good. You should not do this, you should do this. Limits on desire is what prevents envy from getting out of control. And the old order of religion all over the world was an effective prevention mechanism of envy spiraling out of control. But the McWoke, Great Reset globalists are stupid. They don't understand history, many of them, and they think that they can rewrite the human existence and overcome the reality that undifferentiation breeds violent chaos, and it's not going to work. That's why we are the most envious, resentful society in the world in some sense, because we don't have any checks on our desire. We don't have any healthy boundaries of behavior. No one's allowed to do anything. You're not allowed to say anything about gender or anything, right? You can't talk about anything. It's all gone. The only thing that's taboo is differentiation itself, boundaries. That's the only thing that's taboo in this decayed state of the McWoke religion. And of course, this is a consequence of our culture being haunted by the cross for 2,000 years, destroying the old sacrificial containment of violence of the sacred system of the old past. But it's not the fault of the Gospels. It's our fault for having that perspective and then refusing to move beyond the old primitive way of sacrificial violence to create order in our society. So yes, we are in a weird spot. We're in a transitionary stage, and it's like the training wheels of history have been taking off. Or, Girard calls religion the placenta of humanity. You could also see it as the training wheels of humanity. Or if you want to play bowling, it's the bumpers on the bowling game, right? And now the bumpers are off, and now the training wheels are off. Sacrificial order doesn't work. And now we're either going to sink or swim as a species. And that's the place we're at right now. And isn't it great that we have the opportunity to use talk radio and other mediums like this to talk about this at this time? Perfect timing, right? We'll be back in just a moment.
Ronald Reagan would turn over in his grave if he saw what's going on today.
Crazy things are happening.
You cannot be afraid. You've got to stand up for what you believe is right.
But one thing is for sure.
You can't trust anybody.
For talk, news, and information, you can count on us.
Enough is enough. I mean, I almost blew a gasket.
Good for the country.
I know what I'm talking about. A lot of wackos out there.
Your connection to talk about it. The all-new News Talk 1040, WHBO.
President Biden and Vice President Harris are meeting with Asian American leaders in Atlanta this evening in the wake of a deadly shooting spree at 3 area spas. Most of the victims were Asian American women. Earlier today, the president toured the CDC, the same day the agency relaxed social distancing recommendations. For schools, it now allows students to sit as close to 3 feet apart in classrooms. NFL quarterback Deshaun Watson is now facing accusations of sexual assault or inappropriate behavior from a dozen women. Attorney Tony Busby says he's heard from 22 women.
What we received instead of cooperation with Mr. Watson's agent was dismissive behavior and, frankly, incredible arrogance.
Watson denies he acted inappropriately, and he says he looks forward to clearing his name. The Dow and the S&P closed lower, but the Nasdaq recouped some of yesterday's losses, closing up 99 points today. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
David Gronowski here, your host. So glad to have this time with you as we return live to the program A Neighbor's Choice together. Email me hello@aneighborschoice.com or drop us a comment on our YouTube or other video streams that you have available. I think the Facebook one, those guys, YouTube's got problems too, for real, but I think Facebook's been messing with the video because it seems like it doesn't even show up sometimes when we're live streaming on Facebook. But who knows what that's about? Who cares? Abiola on our YouTube stream says, my very liberal family member was talking about going to Hawaii for vacation. They don't understand that the state is irreparably destroyed by the shutdown, and they'll damn Florida in the same breath. And that's because, they're programmed by a religious media. You know, when we look at TBN, we're like, oh, that's religious programming, right? It's, what is the other one? CBN, Christian Broadcast Network, Trinity Broadcast Network. What are those programs? EWTN, the Catholic station, right? We're like, oh, that's religious proselytizing. That's what ABC is. It's not like it. It is that. That's what CBS is. That's what NBC are. AP, Bloomberg, Teen Vogue, all of it. They are all religious proselytizers. They have a transcendence, and they believe that it's okay to sacrifice some for that greater transcendence, to bind themselves together in that holy cause that creates unity in a semblance of peace for a moment in their hearts, but it doesn't last. BL says, we cannot underestimate the degree to which Trump derangement syndrome played into this insane exalting of Fauci. And that's again true. It's not Trump derangement syndrome, though, at the heart of it, right? Because obviously this worship of scientism has existed in pop culture, media statism, and so forth for before Trump came into the political scene. But it's true that they were so desperate. That was it's a great point, because Donald Trump, when he was president, I've told you before, he's the heretic, right? He's a heretic because he doesn't use politically correct language to sell the steady state of government. He uses crass language, self-interested language, direct language, inappropriate language, and so forth, which reveals the ugly reality of what all the little fake politically correct warmongers and mass cagers are doing.
And so when he's in there, he's a heretic. And so when this pandemic comes, there's still millions of people who religiously look to the state for comfort to soothe them. And he doesn't do soaring rhetoric very good. And so they had to find some, well, it's true. They had to find a patriarch, didn't they? They had to find a national daddy figure. The left did. They needed a patriarch, and they said Dr. Fauci will do. And Dr. Fauci became the patriarch for the McWoke crowd to subsume their identity under and to exalt and to cling to his every word for safety and comfort in a time of distress. And that's the nature of the state. It is a religious thing. And so yes, because Trump was a designated scapegoat of the media class, because he was a heretical blasphemer of politically correct speech codes, they had to make do with Dr. Fauci because he was someone who was not appointed by Trump. So they couldn't have anybody with Trump's taint associated with it, right? Anybody who he had picked, they couldn't get behind, and anybody who praised Trump was totally out the door. So they had to pick Dr. Fauci, and he became a kind of symbolic president, patriarch for the McWoke crowd, because they wanted a nanny daddy to tell them what to do and tell them it's okay and tell them don't wear a mask. So they didn't wear a mask like idiots. Remember, they're told that it's scientific, but they stupidly, anti-scientifically didn't wear a mask because Dr. Fauci told them not to. So none of their stuff makes any sense except for they wanted a daddy. And I understand because people are scared. They want a parent that can, guide them. But that's what statism does. It creates perpetual infants that can't deal with life themselves and figure out how to take care of their immune system. And the thing, again, that bothers me so much about these nanny state people like Dr. Fauci is that they know that they have millions of low information people who cling to their every word as gospel, and yet they can't even utter one thing about, hey, guys, I'm Dr. Fauci, and I'm here today to tell you that soybean oil can mess your body up. That's in your mayonnaise. That's in your fried stuff at the restaurants. Your fried diner eggs most likely are cooked in those things. The chicken, the pork that you eat are storing these vegetable oils in large amounts. That stuff is correlated to some of the issues that we're having with these comorbidities, which are the things that make this virus a more deadly deal. So I really care about you, and I know big farm guys are going to get mad at me in big agriculture, but I got to tell you, let's get off the seed oils because the science says that's probably a good thing for us to do. But he can't do it, and that's why I have zero respect for these people. Because I don't like nanny state people, but at least if you're going to be a nanny state, can you at least throw out one single iota of truth and decency for people who are clinging on to you religiously? No, they can't even have the dignity and decency to do that. And I have nothing but contempt for that kind of stuff. Because I have no problem being patient with folks who don't know, right? Who are not in a position of power and influence and authority over others. They can be ignorant. They can put on their stupid mask while they're cutting grass and are walking in a deserted forest and stupidity. They can do that. I understand they shouldn't, but but it is what it is. All we like sheep have gone astray. I get it. We all are like that. So we can have tolerance, but I don't have much patience for people who have authority over millions of, and it's not real authority, but it's a psychological authority that they have for millions of people. And yet they do no good at all. They don't want to do anything to say, hey, let me get you guys. I'm going to be your nanny, and I want to tell you to get off the seed oils. No, can't do it. They can't even have a modicum of decency and science. NewYorkDailyNews.com. I want to give her an update on the Democrats. They're like the hyenas turning on Scar with Cuomo. The latest story, Cuomo joked he wanted to mount a female staffer like a dog, says new Ronan Farrow story in New Yorker. So that's in other news. We have Cuomo. What a mess, huh? That's what happens. You live by the hyenas and you die by the hyenas. And the media is a hyena pack. And they are a hyena in search of protecting the powerful and getting themselves in a position where they can get access to those powerful folks, those high priests of their sacred state, and then trying to proselytize to the rest of the country why we all need to share their fervent, faithful, religious devotion to the state as they want it to be. But we have to understand that we don't have to accept their failed religion. We can't. If we do, it'll destroy us even worse. Our country will get worse the more that bad ideology of state power and state control and coercion and force. And it's not just the state, but that's where it manifests. Cancel culture demonstrates that a culture that scapegoats starts with the culture in a world that's not, the state physically can cancel people, right? With drone strikes, just ask the U.S. citizens that Barack Obama killed overseas with drone strikes. Just ask them if they can cancel people. They can cancel people's life. Just ask, people, Waco, Texas, what happened there, right? Just ask Ruby Ridge, what happens to these situations where people get canceled physically by the state. Just ask the people who are victims of the drug war and victims of inner city policing for nonviolent victimless choices. But ultimately, that physical canceling is downstream from a culture that's okay with canceling people socially and shaming people for every little self-righteous excuse they can come up with. A YouTube comment says, I'll never forget the day Trump said, I choose not to wear a mask. I knew they would make them mandatory. And if you research it, that was early April and they were not pushing them. But within a week, they were screaming about us wearing them worldwide. The USA owns the WHO. David, another commenter says, funny thing about masks is that a lot of those in the medical field pushing them don't understand respiratory protection. I had to learn it for construction work. Well, I'd like to learn more about it. David, share some more thoughts that we might be able to share with our radio audience too. That's pretty interesting. But I want to turn to this story here in Andrew Sullivan in the meantime, that is on Substack.com. It says, when the narrative replaces the news, how the media grotesquely distorted the Atlanta massacres. And it says the massacres at 3 massage parlors in the Atlanta area this week, leaving 8 human beings dead, others injured, and their families scarred, were horrifying. Read this deeply moving story about the son of one of the women killed to remind yourself of this. It's brutal. The grief will spread and resonate some more. But this story has also been deeply instructive about our national discourse in the state of the American mainstream and elite media. This story's coverage is proof, it seems to me, that American journalists have officially abandoned the habit of attempting any kind of objectivity in reporting these stories. We are now in the enlightened social justice world of moral clarity and narrative shaping. Here's the truth. We don't yet know why this man did these horrible things. It's probably complicated, or as my therapist used to say, multi-determined. That's why we have thorough investigations and trials in America. We only have one solid piece of information as to motive, which is the confession by the mass killer to law enforcement that he was a religious fundamentalist who was determined to live up to chastity and repeatedly failed, as is often the case. Like the 9/11 bombers or the mass murderer at the Pulse nightclub, he took out his angst on the source of what he saw as his temptation and committed mass murder. This is evil in the classic fundamentalist sense, a perversion of religion and sexual repression into violence. We should not take the killer's confession as definitive, of course, but we can probe it, and indeed his story is backed up by acquaintances and friends and family. The New York Times originally ran one piece reporting this out. The Washington Post also followed up with one piece citing contemporaneous evidence of the man's religious mania and sexual compulsion. It appears that the man frequented at least 2 of the spas he attacked. He chose the spas, his ex-roommate said, because he thought they were safer than other ways to get easy sex. Just this morning, the New York Times ran a second piece which confirms that the killer had indeed been in rehab for sexual impulses, was a religious fanatic, and his next target was going to be a business tied to the pornography industry. We have yet to find any credible evidence of anti-Asian hatred or bigotry in this man's history. Maybe we will. We can't rule it out. But we do know that his roommates say they once asked him if he picked the spas for sex because the women were Asian, and they say he denied it, saying he thought those spas were just the safest way to have quick sex. That needs to be checked out more. But the only piece of evidence about possible anti-Asian bias points away not toward it. And yet, well, you know what's coming. Accompanying one original piece on the known facts, the New York Times ran 9 separate stories about the incident as part of the narrative that this was an anti-Asian hate crime fueled by white supremacy and or misogyny. Not to be outdone, the Washington Post ran 16 separate stories on the incident as an anti-Asian white supremacist hate crime. 16. One story for the facts, 16 stories on how critical race theory would interpret the event regardless of the facts. For good measure, one of their columnists denounced reporting of law enforcement's version of events in the newspaper because it distracted attention from the real motives. Today, the New York Times ran yet another full-on critical theory piece disguised as news on how these murders are proof of structural racism and sexism, because some activists say they are. Mass killers, if they are motivated by bigotry or hate, tend to let the world know. And the suspected attacker in Pittsburgh said he wanted to kill Jews while rampaging inside a synagogue. Police said the man charged with killing people at an El Paso Walmart told them he was targeting Mexicans that day. And the man who massacred black parishioners inside a Charleston church detailed his racist motivations at length. This mass murderer in Atlanta actually denied any such motive. And to repeat myself, there is no evidence for it. And that has been true from the very start. And yet a friend forwarded me the note swiftly sent to students and faculty at Harvard, which sums up the instant view of our elite. Many of us woke up yesterday to the horrific news of the vicious and deadly attack in Atlanta, the latest in a wave of increasing violence targeting the Asian American, and Pacific Islander community. This violence has a history. From Chinese exclusion to the nativist rhetoric amplified during the pandemic, anti-Asian hostility has deep roots in American culture. And on and on. It was almost as if they had a pre-existing script to read whatever the facts of the case. Nicole Hannah-Jones, the most powerful journalist at the New York Times, took to Twitter in the early morning of March 17th to pronounce, quote, last night's shooting and the appalling rise in anti-Asian violence stem from a sick society where nationalism has been stoked and normalized. Ibram Kendi tweeted, quote, locking arms with Asian Americans facing this lethal wave of anti-Asian terror, their struggle is my struggle. Our struggle is against racism and white supremacist domestic terror. When the cops reported the killer's actual confession, left Twitter went nuts. One gender studies professor recited the litany. The refusal to name anti-Asianness, racism, white supremacy, misogyny, or class, and this is whiteness doing what it always does around justifying its death dealing, to ignore the deeply racist and misogynistic history of hypersexualization of Asian women, and this explication from law enforcement of what emboldened this killer is also a willful erasure. So they're trying to quarantine what these people were doing with this pathetic ideology created by dead old white European men like Michel Foucault, is that they're trying to quarantine the fall of man into one category of people. They want to scapegoat one race or gender or whatever religion. It's not just the race thing. They'll scapegoat one gender, one race, one culture, one religion as the place where the fallenness of man has most fully occurred, And then if they want to create a mimetic contagion of accusation against anybody in that group and say you deny and you repent of being a male or being so-called white or so-called whatever it is, Christian or whatever, and then you repent of that and you self-flagellate for the rest of your life, and then you can be like Joe Biden and literally lock up people of every race and bomb people of color all over the globe, and that's okay because you're self-flagellating about your whiteness and all this stuff. This is a pathetic, disgusting, repulsive, idiotic religion, the McWokeness. And it is trying to compete with Christianity by getting us to turn on each other and hate each other for our skin color and hate people because of their gender and hate people because of their religion, rather than recognizing that all of us are human beings and that we're all fallen, and that once you understand that, that's what gives you the ability to have a progressive mindset where you can move past tribal hatred and collective violence. I'm David Gornoski. We'll take a quick break and return, including some of your comments, when we come back after this short break.
Hello, this is David Gornoski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa.
Not attorney spokeswoman.
Looking to enhance your workout at home social distancing? There's no better way to do that than with a post-workout supplement from Fortify. It's the new all-in-one pre- and post-workout supplement. It's completely all-natural. There are no artificial flavors or sweeteners. Fortify Fit is the first of its type in the U.S. Fortify Fit combines all 10 of the latest sports nutrition ingredients in one canister. Build muscle, strength, endurance with Fortify Fit. Plus, it'll kickstart your immune system quickly, safely. Right now, you receive 25% off by using the code RADIO. Use the code RADIO to receive the 25% off discount. Fortify Fit, created and designed by board-certified Dr. Michael Lang. You know him as the radio host of Ask the Doctor. Get Fortify Fit with 2 delicious flavors, strawberry watermelon and fruit punch. Amazing results when using pre- and post-workouts. Fortify Fit, available at fortified.com. That's FORTIFEYE.com. Remember the EYE in Fortify. Dr. Michael Lang's Fortify Fit with 2 delicious flavors, keeping America fit and healthy during this time of precautionary change.
A Neighbor's Choice is back. I'm your host, David Gornoski. So looking at the comments, I want to go back to David Davidson's comments. He said, funny thing, okay, so he was talking about his experience of masks and construction work. So he said, these masks being shielded wouldn't be fit to wear on work sites where asbestos and silica and other harmful substances are common, so they definitely wouldn't be fit for filtering a virus. If they were serious about respiratory protection, they would be recommending full-face respirator masks with supplied air cartridges, if not a full-body hazmat suit. Facial hair shaving would also be heavily recommended for proper mask sealing. A beard can stop your mask from sealing your face effectively. So that'll be the new normal. At some point, these little losers who are fake science people, they're going to say, hey, everybody has to shave their beard. and they'll get millions of people, millions of poor little sheep to do it. Millions of poor little sheep will do it. They'll say, hey, if you want to be a part of the new normal and they're going to be doing these vaccines for COVID every year, probably forever, got to get your COVID, your annual COVID shot or your quarterly COVID shot or whatever they'll have. And they'll also probably tell you, hey, you can't have a beard now. That's the new normal. Beard is a symbol of, I'm sure, don't they have an article in Critical Theory about beard as a symbol of the patriarchy or something? These people are clowns. These are fools. They're just filled with hate, and they hate human beings, and they hate reality, and they hate God, and they hate love. They just want to tear everything down. Everything's evil except for their violence that they support. They go and vote for a joke like Joe Biden and then lecture us about the dumbest stuff that they can imagine, about how they're self-righteous heroes of language, and they're going to construct a new universe with their stupid language games. This is what they support. I mean, you got the story here in Washington Times. It says, Satanists sue for religious right to ritual abortions. Well, the Satanic Temple of Texas files suit to defend its religious right to child sacrifice. I mean, that's expected. That's not going to be canceled by these people. The Daily Beast has a story. Several staffers were informally told by transition officials that some past marijuana use would be overlooked, only to be told later that they were being asked to resign. And that's Biden White House sandbags staffers and sidelines dozen for pot use. And I think those young people were lucky, because in Biden's entire career, he usually puts you in an assault cage for something like that. And so that's what the McWoke people are proud of putting in the White House. A guy who, has ruined many lives, has oppressed many people. It's all okay because he is playing the word game stuff with them. So they're like, he's a useful fool for us to get what we need, which is moving more and more power in our direction. Meanwhile, they don't care about voices like Tara Reade, who, has resurfaced saying, that she still exists. But they don't want to hear it. McWoke doesn't want to hear about her. Washington Times says, I'm still here. Biden accuser Tara Reade resurfaces as Cuomo scandal ignites the Me Too moment. So that's, they don't want to hear about her because she is accusing someone who is a utility for them right now to get a little bit more power, a little bit more control. And if Trump had played that role, if he had said, I'm going to be a Democrat, I'm going to be pro-abortion, I'm going to be pro, political correct language, if he had played that game, they would have had no problem using him just as much they would use Biden. If you're directionally moving the ball forward even a millimeter in their direction of power, they will excuse everything. It's like what I tell you about the past heroes of their movement. Joe Stalin, Uncle Joe Stalin, would get canceled faster if there was evidence of him mansplaining or manspreading on a train in Moscow than the record of him killing millions of people. They don't care about the real stuff. That McWoke religious tradition is all about language. It's all about symbol. They would cancel Stalin in a heartbeat if they had an audio clip of him mansplaining to a woman about Marxism. That's the reality of this stupid joke of a religion. But we're going to beat it. It's going to fall apart, and we're going to continue on the personhood revolution of Jesus, creating innovation and prosperity, neighbor to neighbor. I'm David Gronowski. Email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. But for now, Godspeed.